Beth-El, for those who know me or should know me, and for those who shouldn't know me, I don't know who I am. Delighted to welcome you to our Judaism-To-Go coffee clutch, and hope that you have a coffee cup somewhere nearby. And I love this coffee cup. It was made by my friend, Howard Friedman. So, l'chaim, everybody.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
This is a new format for this program, which we started before Pesach and then discontinued because of the holidays. It used to be on Facebook Live, and now we're doing it as a Zoom so that we can engage in a bit of conversation if the mood leads there. I'd like to welcome you all, and I'd like to begin by taking notice of the fact that today is Earth Day, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, established in 1970. And I well remember that. Sandy and I were in our first year of rabbinical seminary. And lots that is good has happened since the beginning of Earth Day. This year we can't come together for the typical celebration, but that does not mean that we cannot think of it and do something about it. There has been greater awareness of the impact of humans on the environment, better water in most of the country, no DDT, no asbestos, but still not enough attention is given to issues of climate change. And there's no question that our current health challenge has environmental components as well. I'd like to launch this conversation, which is not on the topic of Earth Day, but appropriately we should take note of it, with a midrash, a teaching of the rabbis in a commentary on the book of Ecclesiastes. So the story is told that God took Adam and Eve on a tour of the Garden of Eden and said to them, "See how beautiful and perfect are all my works. All that I have created, I have entrusted to you. Therefore, be ever mindful. Do not abuse or desolate my world. For if you abuse or desolate it, there will be no one to repair it after you." And this is a teaching which is at least 1,500 years old. So great insight from our ancestors as we face our current conditions today. Over the past weeks and months, we have been doing a variety of educational information programs in addition to our services and Shabbat observances. We have been bombarded with data and with statistics and other relevant and important information about COVID-19. This morning, I'd like to take a bit of a different direction and make a little bit of time for some reflection, philosophic, theological, moral. As we are in social distance mode, and we think and we act in our daily routine, it's important that we also take some time to reflect and to learn and to look back. What do our ancient sources and teachers have to say that may have some value for us today? So this is a no-rush conversation. I have no particular agenda other than introducing you to some classic sources of Judaism, and I'd like us all to be in a laid-back mood. I'll do a little bit of talking, and then hopefully we can engage in conversation. For those of you who would like to have access to some of the texts that I will be using, I invite you to look at the Lev Shalom prayer book in our website virtual resources. And we are going to be looking at a segment from the prayer book. This is the prayer book that we use for the Saturday morning chance encounters with Cantor Melissa. So if you have access to that, Or if you have the prayer book that we use on Saturday mornings at the synagogue, the Lev Shalem, we are looking at the section that begins on page 235. And this section is what is referred to in the tradition as Pirkei Avot. When we talk about the sacred literature of our tradition, we generally think of the Torah and the rest of the Bible. But there's a whole body of additional teaching and literature that is part of our sacred heritage and lays the foundations for Judaism. So this morning, I'd like to introduce you, if you have not yet met, the sages of Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot is one of 63 tractates in the Mishnah. And the Mishnah is the body of literature that lays the foundation for what will become the Talmud. On top of the Mishnah, the rabbis developed a commentary known as the Gemara. Mishnah plus Gemara constitutes Talmud. The teachings of the Mishnah take us somewhere from the 2nd century before the Common Era to the beginnings of the 3rd century of the Common Era, a span of about 400 to 500 years. And Pirkei Avot is a unique tractate in the Mishnah. It's generally referred to simply as Avot, but more endearingly Pirkei Avot. The headings, the teachings, the chapters of the sages, as it is usually translated, the founders, the foundational teachers. It is a collection of teachings and aphorisms and proverbs and advice about leading a life of goodness and holiness. It's kind of moral preparation for those who would become rabbis, judges, teachers. What are some of the character issues that need to be attended to in order to serve in this capacity? And Avot is one of the most popular of the 63 tractates in the Mishnah. And what is interesting is that it is different from the rest of the Mishnah, because most of the Mishnaic teachings have to do with what is called halacha, or prescriptive behaviors, whether legal or ritual. Pirkei Avot doesn't have anything to say about halacha. It's all what we call the body of agada, of narrative, of moral instruction, anecdotal, biographical to some degree, but mostly aphoristic and insights into what our ancient sages thought about life and about relationships and about faith. Pirkei Avot is not included in the Talmudic extension. That is, there is no Gemara to Pirkei Avot. It is just the Mishnah, the teachings of the ancient rabbis. So we'll be encountering rabbis of the early pre-Christian centuries, the early 3rd century. So following the destruction of the temple, the mantle of leadership passes from the priests to the rabbis. And priesthood was hereditary and hierarchical. The rabbinic model was different. The rabbis acquired their status by merit, by learning, and by example. And whereas the priests were the teachers and enforcers of the written Torah, the rabbis expanded the concept of the written Torah to include an oral Torah, a body of tradition. And they saw themselves as the inheritors of that body of tradition, which they believed was given to Moses at Sinai at the same time that the written Torah was given, but it remained part of the oral narrative. The teachings of these rabbis doesn't begin to be codified or written down until soon after the destruction of the temple. And the collector of the Mishnah is Rabbi Judah Hanasi, who lived in the late 200s, 220. So in the early 3rd century of the Common Era, he compiled the teachings that we have. So let's look a little bit at Pirkei Avot. And if you have it in front of you, good. If not, just kind of follow along with me. It begins with a validation of the chain of tradition of Torah. And here we're talking primarily of the oral teaching of Torah. It says on page 235, which is chapter 1, Mishnah 1. Each entry is called a Mishnah. Each chapter is a Perek. So Perek 1, Mishnah 1, chapter 1, Mishnah 1. Tells us Moses received the Torah at Sinai, transmitted it to Joshua, Joshua to the elders to the prophets to the members of the Knesset HaGedolah, the Great Assembly. We don't know exactly who they were, a juridical body during the Persian Greek period. They formulated 3 precepts, and here we see the purpose of Pirkei Avot, to train teachers, rabbis, judges to in the moral character qualities of their role. They formulated 3 principles. Be cautious in rendering a decision. Be thoughtful, metunim badim, be thoughtful, be cautious. Rear many disciples and build a fence to protect the Torah. Be cautious in rendering decisions, rear many students, build a fence to protect the teachings and the practice of Torah. So here we have, right off, a sense of moderation. You are going to serve a community. You have to be moderate. You have to find a path that will help others come in. The concept of building a fence around the Torah has legal and ritual implications, but I think of it in our own times. What does it mean to build a fence around the Torah? Well, if they tell you don't come within 6 feet of somebody, perhaps 10 feet is a better idea. If they tell you watch how you breathe, masks are helpful. If they tell you you can go to the supermarket, well, find a time when it might best work for you. This is building a fence around the Torah. There is the permissible, but then we hedge it. We protect it a little bit. One of my favorite teachings of Pirkei Avot, and one many of you will know, perhaps even by heart, is the next one. It is the teaching of Shimon the Righteous. And he taught that the world stands on 3 principles, on 3 pillars, on Torah, on service, and on good deeds. And we sing that around when we carry the Torah around the synagogue. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, haolam omed, al haTorah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al gemilut hasadim, and so forth. So the Torah stands on Torah, avodah, and good deeds. Here is a sense that there is a tripod that sustains society. And that tripod includes Torah, which we might translate generically as learning, as teaching. Avodah, which in its original sense means worship, earlier in the temple service and then in the synagogue. Worship, appreciation, acknowledgement, and gemilut hasadim, deeds of loving kindness. I see it not only as a tripod, but 3 different types of relationships. Torah is inner cultivation. Worship is going outwards to something transcendent. And gemilut hasadim, deeds of loving kindness, is the horizontal dimension. So the inward, the transcendent, and the horizontal, ways in which we can expand our personality and our character. I'm going to give you one more. There's one I'm not going to give you, and if you have the text in front of you, it's 1.5, because it says you should not engage in small talk with your wife or other women. So we have voted that one out from Pirkei Avot, and with the emergence of women leadership, especially in the synagogue and the Jewish community, the rabbis were vetoed on that one, but it certainly reflects the teachings of the time, and you'll find such teachings among the Greeks. Remember, the rabbis lived in a Greco-Roman environment, and in many ways, they reflected the best and the worst, and sometimes they transcended the best and the worst. Okay, this is a very famous teaching because it's associated with our good friend Hillel. Hillel lived in the first pre-Christian century, and he was a teacher who attracted a great circle of disciples. He had a colleague, Shammai, with whom he did not always see eye to eye. We'll come back to Hillel in the weeks ahead. But this one, you know, this was a favorite teaching of Hillel. 1:14. I'll give it to you in Hebrew first. Im ein ani li mili, וכשאני לעצמי מה אני, ואם לא עכשיו אימתי. If I am not for myself, who is for me? If I am for myself only, what am I? If not now, when? I think that in many ways, this is the greatest moral imperative. It translates love your neighbor as yourself into a very practical formula. You need to attend to yourself. But if you only look after yourself, what is your value? If not now, when? The moral imperative of action. It comes to mean also that we need to improve ourselves, if I am not for myself, who is for me, in order that we might improve the world. But if I'm for myself alone, what am I? Working on yourself is a necessary component of going out to work on the world. We talk a lot about tikkun olam, the repair of the world in Judaism, but there is a parallel concept, tikkun atzmi, repair of the self. So that is my prepared presentation, if it is a presentation, my reflections this morning. I'd like to stop there and see if any of these speak to you or speak to the moment from your perspective. We have about 10 minutes to engage, and Jackie is there to mute and unmute. She will unmute you if you totally disagree with me. No. Okay, Jackie, how do we handle this part?
So I have unmuted everyone, but what I would like to preface that with is if you have a television set on or any background noise, if you could please mute that so we don't have interference. And then you're welcome to engage in conversation.
So just kind of raise your hand if you want to say something so other people know that you are coming on. Or raise a question. Do these things ring a bell? What did they get wrong? Yes. Identify yourself for the group because there is not a name under you.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. My name's Amy, and the last part spoke to me. Good morning, Rabbi, and everyone.
Good morning.
That we are taking care of ourselves and we try to take care of our neighbors. What do we do with the dilemma of those who will refuse to do the same? I mean, we obviously, you don't want to get into arguments with people, whether in person or on social media, but I always feel conflicted, like I don't know how to spread this love when there are a lot of people out there stopping it.
I guess the best way is by example. Remember, I talked about the moderation of the rabbis. There are certain things that are permissible within a range of a field of activity. There are certain things that are illegal, and then that's a different dimension and you may not be able to do. But I think that you can if you feel that somebody is not hedging the Torah or the space appropriately. So you take the necessary steps to do that. And if the situation permits it, in a non-confrontational way, to share your concern. We have to always be careful not to appear to be too self-righteous about things. And, you know, there is an appropriate moment to say something, and then an appropriate moment simply to act in the ways that you think appropriate. But that's a very important observation, yeah, because we all deal with it. People are stressed enough that we shouldn't create more tension in relationships. Thank you, Amy. Any other questions or comments?
Okay, I'll throw something out
Okay,
there.
Julia, our
You can
literary.
always count on me to say something.
Absolutely. What would what would B say?
What would Vonnegut say?
Right.
Um,
What would
well,
Julia say? Let's see what Julia would say.
well, so I guess probably similar. Although I'll just mention Vonnegut briefly, but you know, he has so many wonderful words that apply to situations like now. Just being a survivor like he was. There are wonderful quotes out there in our website, VonnegutLibrary.org. We have different people reading their favorite Vonnegut passages. So that's a place to go if you get bored or more than that. But I guess my question or wondering is right now, you know, there's so many people who are out there, whether they're healthcare professionals or people feeding people, they're doing these things that, you know, we're talking about is so important to be doing things. And for myself, I feel like the stuff that I'm doing is not out there. It's here, or, you know, it's connecting different people or doing, you know, I'm trying to do good things, but I also feel like, wow, there are people really suffering right now. And I don't know what the best way to go about, you know, protecting myself and my children and, you know, all my loved ones. But then also, I guess, I don't know where I'm going with this, Rabbi. So do you get a sense of what I'm...
I think I understand perfectly, because I get that feeling as well. We see what some people are doing. They put themselves on the line, in the front lines, and we wonder, you know, what we can do. Are we being significant? In many ways, it's a question of meaning. At a time when we have a hard time understanding even what is going on, right? So I think that here the issue of moderation comes in as well. We do what we can, when we can, from where we are. And some of us, that's an Arthur Ashe adapted prescription. Some of us have additional responsibilities that limit us from doing certain types of things. Some of us have parental duties. Some of us have health issues. You have to take care of yourself as well. Some of us have communal duties that obligate us to do certain things and don't permit us to be doing other things. Age is a factor. So I think that we have to find that comfortable space between being for ourselves and being for others in the best ways that we can. And there are always options and opportunities. You can support existing projects, even if you cannot be in the front lines of those projects. So that's part of the education, you know, learning, be informed, that's the Torah part. Be informed, then reach out in service and in good deeds in the ways that you can. If you can't do it in kind or tangibly, do it financially. If you can just get on the phone and encourage other people to be attentive and to do something, that too. So I don't think that there is any one solution for everybody. But it's a very important question, and I think we all have that sense of, am I making enough of a difference at this time? We are at the very beginning of this, I think, hopefully moving towards some transition, resolution, but we will learn as we move forward. I began by quoting the tripod of the Jewish tradition: Torah, Avodah, and Gemilut Hasadim. Learning, teaching, the facts, right? Service, inner cultivation as well, and deeds of kindness. At the end of this first chapter of Pirkei Avot, there is an alternative tripod. This first tripod, Torah, service, and good deeds, is kind of a more personal tripod. And then the chapter ends with the words of Rabbi Simeon, the son of Gamliel, who says, the world rests on three things, as though he is ignoring what Antigonos, what the earlier teacher had said. He now tells us not what Simon the Righteous had said about Torah, service, and good deeds. He says, the world rests on three pillars: on justice, on peace, and on truth. Justice, peace, and truth. Earlier, learning, worship, deeds of kindness. That's the personal. Now we go into society, and it is our role, as best as we can, to work on issues of truth, of justice, and of peace. And he quotes a passage from the book of Zechariah. The rabbis often do that to substantiate a teaching. So he says, the world rests on three things: justice, peace, and truth. As it is written, with truth, justice, and peace shall your city gates be judged. So we are also seeking to exercise ourselves and to make sure that the authorities, that our leaders, city, state, national, and world leaders pay attention to those three components which are intermingled with one another: justice, peace, and truth. So perhaps we can explore those concepts as we move ahead in the next weeks. My hope is to spend the next several weeks looking at teachings from Pirkei Avot, because it is customary to study a chapter from Pirkei Avot each of the weeks between Passover and Shavuot. The book contains 6 chapters. Originally it was 5. A chapter was added later. So 6 chapters of Pirkei Avot, 1 for each week, leading from Pesach to Shavuot. It's 7 weeks, but for the Sabbath of each week. We're doing it on Wednesday, so you can study it on your own later. So I invite you, I encourage you to try to find a text of Pirkei Avot. You can actually go online and Google it, and you will find many versions. It is one of my favorite rabbinic texts, and very popular and accessible. Thank you for joining us in the conversation this morning, and go ahead, act with justice, peace, and truth, each to the best of our abilities and circumstances, and don't forget Torah, service, and good deeds as well. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Enjoy your coffee.